quick start rules. I think quick start rules are amazing. Every time we play a new system and I have people joining in, usually Seth will have access to all the rules, but a lot of the other guys, I'll just send them the quick start rules. And then maybe I'll have a rule book available if they really want to deep dive. But most time it's just like, hey, here's the quick start rules, and we'll cover stuff in as we play.
Onboarding is imperative, right?
Mhm.
How is it? What are the initial impressions? How, does the player understand the core resolution mechanic? Do they understand what their character can do and how to succeed at basic tasks? For the GM, how do you set up a scene? What are the consequences of, certain actions? And then how do you also, as a GM, improvise within the rules, right?
Mhm.
That's why a lot of times when we're testing these systems, we're trying to do the, kind of like do this first, play test, adventure module, beginner box, tutorial, whatever it's called. We're trying to do that first to get the full onboarding experience as both GM and players.
Right.
Because, that first game session is going to determine a lot of whether you keep playing.
Oh, yeah.
Or whether you have so much fun, you're like, oh, that was a one shot, but I want to play again, So, yeah, we've had a lot of that. But part of that goes into the design, right, of the system.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, next thing we're gonna kind of go into is the role of system design in smoothing that curve, right? So, like, even if there's a lot going on, there's a difference in I don't know how the best way to say it. Like, you can have a really, really tough learning curve where there's a lot to learn, but it's so smooth that it doesn't feel all that complex. And so there are different design elements in games that can make a game or can help or hinder the learning and the learning curve, right? So, kind of looking at the mechanics, like, do we have unified mechanics, meaning, the mechanics across the board are relatively the same? Or do we have many subsystems, right? Because you get into like different subsystems where there are different rules for this area or this area or this type of character or that type of character in this environment or that, right? And so when you get into a lot of different subsystems, you have to learn, different things like that. And next is going to be, we kind of hit on it already a little bit, but clear character sheets is the character sheet. And so just even from a graphic design standpoint, is it a clean, easy to read, clear hierarchy character sheets that you can easily glance at, see what you need, and move on?
Yeah.
Is it paper? Is it digital? Right? And but really, just having a good character sheet makes a huge difference. And even kind of like what you're saying is like the options you need on the character sheet, or is every
And Jeff froze for just a second. Come back, Jeff.
Hey, can you still hear me?
Oh, now I can hear
All
you.
right, I'm back.
Yep.
Okay, I have no idea what happened. I looked at, all right, where did I make it to? Did I make it all the way through character sheets? Did you hear that?
Yes, I think we did.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll move on. So character sheets to me, now I'm a graphic designer, so a good character sheet means probably more than it should to me. But a clear character sheet where everything's easy to reference, super important. Next is going to be reference tools. And this is when a quick start rules. I think quick start rules are amazing. Every time we play a new system and I have people joining in, usually Seth will have access to all the rules, but a lot of the other guys, I'll just send them the quick start rules. And then maybe I'll have a rule book available if they really want to deep dive. But most time it's just like, hey, here's the quick start rules, and we'll cover stuff in as we play. But then one that I don't know if ever how many systems have this, but I first experienced like the actual like cheat sheet with Daggerheart, and I think Daggerheart does it really well with their little like pop out sheets and stuff. And so like all of my players at my table, when we're a year and a half into a Daggerheart campaign now, and they still keep their cheat sheets there. I don't think anyone uses them anymore, but
Right. So I don't know if
they
you
keep 'em.
remember, because I'm pretty sure I've ran you through a one shot of the Star Wars RPG like
I
years
have played the
ago.
Star Wars RPG, yeah. Yeah.
But in the beginner
Mhm.
boxes, the character folios
Mhm.
had that cheat sheet essentially.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Okay.
it was an open book. Basically, it was like a booklet, right? It's like a folio that's like 3 or 4 pages long, and you would open it up, and instead of having the character sheet solidly on one page, it had it split across half of each page that you had to open to. That way, it basically
Mhm.
had that kind of sidebar like Daggerheart has down the
Okay.
left
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
right side.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
See, that's great.
and it even had it a little more clearly than Daggerheart in that when you turned the page, that was how you leveled up, and
Ooh. Okay.
it showed you okay, you've leveled this ability up. Now you have 3 green die and a yellow die,
Yeah.
for this increased ability
Right.
capability. So it's been around. Daggerheart's definitely not the first to use it.
Mhm.
They've been one of the most prevalent and recent for sure.
Right.
Especially because the Star Wars RPG from
Yeah.
Fantasy Flight Games
When we first went around
is
Daggerheart,
hard to
I
come
vaguely remember you
by.
saying that. Yeah. Yeah. So I remember when we first were looking at Daggerheart, I was saying how cool it was. And I think I do remember you saying that there was another system that had it that you knew of that had it before.
Yeah, which
Um,
they did say. We took a lot of
oh yeah, for sure.
influence from the Star Wars Fantasy Flight Games. We took a lot. I mean, from like there was like a list of like 20 different RPGs they took influences
Yeah.
from.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that was really cool. They did put all that out there that they took that, they're not claiming anything is like their own or that they created all that stuff. So no, but yeah, cheat sheets. And so for reference there, I'm talking about a cheat sheet. It literally sits beside your character sheet and you like pull it out and it literally has an arrow pointing to every part of the character sheet with a little explainer of what that is. And so just having access to like those kind of reference tools are super, super cool. Just having access to a quick start guide, something like that. And even on the GM side, having access to, I love to have a DM screen and then have like, a little printout of different rules back there that I can just quickly reference. But
Yeah.
having some sort of like even quick start GM reference guide type stuff tells you, how to calculate DC and how to do measurements and things like that's really helpful. The next I'm going to say is intuitive terminology. And so I've found a lot of games try to get really, really creative with their terminology. And I'll be honest, a lot of times it's just confusing. And I will say, and I hate to say it because so far I've really enjoyed City of Mist. But sometimes the terminology in City of Mist is so darn complicated. Like I was trying to pull up my sheet here so I could remember it, but I remember reading through some stuff, like even like the player moves, like one of them's like hit with all you got, and change the game, go toe to toe. Like, I mean, those sound really cool, but then you really got to read in it and try to figure out what it actually means.
Well, and if it's been a while since we've played City of Mist
It
and read
has, it
through those
has, yeah.
rules, because the rules definitely said, hey, these are like their abilities. And so
Hmm.
you can use any of these abilities, they give it all you
Yeah.
got or whatever.
Well, so those
And,
that are
and
those are
as
actually
long
the
as the
core move.
GM, right. And well,
Yeah.
right. But they're specific to those characters or those classes, right?
No, no.
And
So
so it's
those are
like,
like that's like your core moves, like your investigate, your convince, face danger. That's within the hit it with all you got, the toe to toe, and
right. But
your
they're still abilities though. They're still like
yeah,
skills essentially. When it boils down to it, they're called different, something different because they're trying to limit how much information is on the character sheet in City of
right,
Mist. And so they're basically giving you these instead of having like lock picking and you know persuasion and blah 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 blah. You're
right,
right. They're giving you the terminology can be a little misleading, but
right,
I would also say even some well-meaning games have terminology issues like Daggerheart, for example. I have literally recorded entire episodes about the fact that they should not have used the word seraph for a class.
oh yeah, yeah,
So if you have not heard that, go look it up. Go look at the pocket dimension and watch Matt and I's conversation about
right,
seraph and why linguistically, it is completely different than every other class,
Mhm.
because every other class in Daggerheart is, you know, fighter, rogue, wizard. I mean, like they're standard classes, and then you have
Mhm.
this one class that is trying to be something different. And I think that
Yeah.
they chose that difference because they were trying to separate themselves from religion. I mean, when it
Mhm.
boils down to it, I think they literally were trying too hard to separate their class and mechanics from religion for a cleric or a priest, right? Or a paladin.
A little
And
bit silly
so,
because Seraph is the name of an angel. I
right,
mean, one
exactly.
of the primary
But
angels in
so
scripture.
instead of doing that, right. So instead of doing that, they got more religious, and then they also used a term that already exists to describe a like a race or a being.
Mhm.
And yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
But terminology is important, people.
Terminology is important. And so even getting into like I feel like every game has some sort of like AC. And so some will call it like AC, some will call it armor, and some's like your hard to hittedness, or like, they have different ways. I don't know. Sometimes the terminology is intuitive, sometimes it's not. And so that's something that's kind of important. And I think that's something that like game designers can sometimes I don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel, right? People know what health points are. We don't have to call it something other than HP because we don't want to be like D&D. Like sometimes I think we just got to kind of keep it with what people understand. Now,
Yeah.
if your system is working in a completely different way, okay, that makes sense. But if it's still just how many hits you can take until you die, HP makes sense. We all know what it means.
And that's pretty
Right. And
standard.
so, yeah, that's pretty standard. But sometimes systems will get kind of fancy and they'll try to change it up. And so, in my opinion, with things like that, with terminology and stuff, I think it's usually best to use things that are the easiest or the most commonly understood. But then, okay, we'll move on into progressive complexity. And so, this is where a system will kind of introduce new rules gradually, right? Like, okay, at level one, you don't need to know every rule of the game. You need to know this set of rules. Oh, now we've hit level two. Okay, so now we're going to start introducing this new complexity. Think about like a video game. Video games do this very, very well, right? You jump into WoW. What are you going to do? You're going to kill a bunch of wolves. You're going to spend your first 2 hours killing the most basic creatures in the world and learning 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, because that's the only abilities you got. 2 hours in, okay, maybe you've added two more abilities and an AoE, right? It gradually moves you into the game, and you see this with the RPG games and probably about everything but sports games. You have some sort of gradual introduction to the game. And so I think doing that with TTRPGs when you're designing a system, just gradually introducing new rules and complexities. And so I think that makes it a lot easier to learn and get into.